I would love to be able to say that this full moon brings stability, serenity, safety within our body, because that is what Taurus full moons tend to do, or tend to want to bring about in the intensity of transformation that we go through with Scorpio energy. And yet, there's a lot of other things going on at this full moon, which make it seem like it could, in the grounding and stability inducing energy of Taurus, which is definitely present for this full moon, also a lot of energy for change, for shifting, for liberation and freeing ourselves from old patterns. So, in a sense, more Scorpio work, but hopefully grounded in greater simplicity and trust and safety and patience and embodiment of the Taurus archetype. Yeah, any full moon is, of course, and I think that's always worth remembering, an illumination of the lunar nature of our being, while the sun archetypically can represent the fullness or totality of our conscious awareness. And the sun right now, this time of the year, being in Scorpio, means that we deal with Scorpio processes, we move through scorpionic waters, alchemical transformation and transmutations of our inner and outer nature, which always necessitate a certain level of confronting the numinous, the darkness, confronting a level of where we have to die, metaphorical deaths, release old forms, release old identities. And then the full moon, the moon always representing the more lunar, semi-conscious, subconscious, emotional, instinctual awareness of our body and our emotional body and our inner child. And the full moon thus illuminates the polar opposite energy from what we currently on one level or another focusing on, so that we can find greater wholeness, the unification of the seeming opposites, which in truth we find out again and again, that which seems like it's polar opposite or paradoxical antitheses of each other are very often just mirror images that speak of the same kind of truth. With Taurus and Scorpio, there is usually a deep underlying drive that can play itself out with power and power dynamics, wanting to stay in control on some level. But this is not the kind of Capricorn Saturn kind of control, but more a deeper, visceral, emotional kind of level of feeling I am in control and thus I am safe. Taurus full moon, in that way, is always a deep invitation to return to simplicity. Return and exhale into the present moment here now in our physical body, and see that even if we're maybe moving through very profound or intense or heavy scorpionic emotional processes or waters the last couple of days or weeks, that we maybe can find out that actually in this moment right now, I am safe. My body is safe. I'm in a safe space. I'm with safe people. I'm in a house. I'm in a home. I've got enough food, whatever it might be. That brings our awareness, brings our nervous system back to the present moment and to the simplicity of it all, to the joy of it all, to the aliveness of it all. Even when maybe on a below the surface kind of level in our body, in our nervous system, in our mind, we move through a lot. But always returning to the present moment, returning to our senses and our sensual nature and our sensuous embeddedness in time, space, and with nature, with reality, with the plants and the trees and the elements and the food and the touch that we receive from these elements, from other people, from other beings, brings us back, it grounds us into the present moment. And that is something that we can use a lot for this full moon, because there's also very, very contradictory energy in the field for it. I want to show it to you on the chart though, just so it makes a bit more sense, hopefully, a bit easier to follow, because yeah, there's so much going on. So as you can see, the full moon will be pretty much exactly 2 days from now, on November the 5th, around early afternoon in Central Europe. So it'll be early morning in the US or the Americas. And we've got a full moon exactly on 13 degrees of Scorpio to Taurus. So of course, if you have any planets around those degrees, or also around 13 degrees or the middle degrees of Leo or Aquarius, which are in square to this full moon, this moon will activate you maybe a bit more than it might activate your friend, your partner, your family members. Looking to the full moon, we always want to look to the ruler of both the moon and the sun at that moment. And here is where we find the intensity. Here is where we find a lot of transformation. We have this very big water trine, water energy in the field, in the air, until middle of December, which really feels like a deep, cleansing, purifying river in our emotional body, in our subconscious, that maybe works a lot with dream time, works a lot with signs and symbols and unexpected feelings arising at the shore of your awareness, or at the realization of your conscious mind that maybe up until now you were never able to see, to feel, to process. Dreams, longings, and visions, Pisces, but also how we feel lost and confused or not certain of our direction. The other side of Pisces is one very strong component of that, right? That is Saturn and Neptune here at the end of Pisces. Jupiter in Cancer is the other part of that. Jupiter at the late degrees of Cancer, and you see the trine aspect they're making here. Exact for this full moon, almost exact. Jupiter and Saturn will go almost exact, and not quite until next year, really fully. And there is that inner child, there is the emotional safety within our own body and system that I feel is a huge and crucial part of this grand water energy until the middle of December, and also for this full moon, and I'll explain why in a moment. And then the third part is Mars, the ruler of Scorpio, the traditional ruler of Scorpio. And you can see it just left Scorpio here at the moment of the full moon. It's still making a trine, the energy is still flowing, but the energy shifts from pure water to, wow, there's some fire, there's some dynamism, there's some activation, there's some forward movement. Especially coming out of the scorpionic depths, Mars in Sagittarius, and Mercury also since a couple of days, is about broadening our minds and visions, finding deeper meaning and higher perspectives on the profound emotional processes that we maybe work through, finding greater levity and ease and lightness exactly because of that meaning, right? In the very famous book, Men's Search for Meaning, from Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor of the Holocaust in Germany, and of concentration camps specifically, he found out from his perspective that the people that would survive the most or the longest or be able to withstand things were the ones that were able to really find meaning, to distill meaning from what they're living through. And in that way also giving them a light, giving them something to look forward to, even if that might not be apparent in the moment right now. And I think that's a crucial part, because as I'm deleting all these lines here, as Mars in Sagittarius enters that first part of that Sagittarian vision, meaning finding energy, it's exactly opposite Uranus. And then you see Uranus is on 0 degrees of Gemini. It's just about to go back into Taurus, a couple of days after the full moon on November the 9th, a day after Mercury goes retrograde on November the 8th. A bit more on that also in a moment. Anyhow, this is the one aspect I really want to focus on for this full moon, and the other one being Venus here in late Libra. Venus is of course the ruler of Taurus, and that way rules this moon. And we see Venus, she's just coming out the last few days as I'm recording this, and yesterday, so around Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Venus was in a perfect exact opposition to Chiron in the sky, bringing in wounding and healing in the term especially of Venus, self-worth, worthiness. Venus is in Libra right now, dealing with relationships and where and how that healing or that awareness of old wounds may be triggered in the last couple of days. Reflections, awarenesses, insights into where and how we ourselves maybe have felt wounded deeply. Chiron and Aries in regards to our will, to our self-identity, and in who we intrinsically are, and how that maybe activated something in our relationships or brought things up in our relationships or led to rejection or loneliness. The deeper themes of Scorpio already vibrating through there a little bit. And at the same time, Venus and Chiron were making this perfect T-square. So both squaring a 90-degree angle aspect, Jupiter and Cancer. Pulling in again this Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces. Jupiter is about how we distill meaning. And I find one of the core aspects of this Grand Water Trine that we have present right now, and for the new moon and for the full moon and up until, another 5-6 weeks, is that Jupiter in Cancer energy that deals so much with that emotional safety within, but also with how we distill meaning and find meaning and find greater expansion in and through and out of old emotional patterns that are maybe not serving us any longer, that keep us small, that were safe or kept a safety net around us in the past. And for this, we can thank these parts and be like, thank you for protecting me, for trying to protect me. But that maybe don't serve us any longer, where the crab shell, instead of becoming a solid, good protective mechanisms against the impacts of the outer world, just becomes a cage that limits new growth. So Venus as the ruler of the moon, coming just out of these two aspects, showing us, hey, there is something about relationships, there is something about equality and justice, there's something about worthiness and self-worth and values, which all relate to Taurus also, and it pulls in so much also that Jupiter and Cancer energy. So this is the one thing. The other very significant thing, as Venus here sits at the end of Libra, we see, of course, the ruler of the Sun, Mars, has just left Scorpio, its own sign, is on a new terrain, promises new things, whereas Venus will leave its own sign just a few days later and move into Scorpio. And as she does so, for the moment of this full moon, she's already making this square aspect to Pluto on 1 degree of Aquarius. Once she moves into Scorpio, the square is also perfect by sign, because right now, she's on Libra to Aquarius. They're both air signs. There is still a greater correspondence or amicability and understanding between these kinds of energies. But Scorpio and Aquarius is energy that really clashes with each other a bit more, that really pulls in the square aspect of this energy even further, which will happen a few days after this full moon. And here are the two things that both the rulers, Venus and Mars, both make tense aspects to these two really shaking up planets of Pluto and Uranus. To me speaks that even though we want to find safety and stability and equanimity and patience and a sense of well-being in our sensual experience and not getting lost or pulled into the maelstrom of Scorpio energy, which is so very yin. It pulls us so deep within, right? That is like that Scorpio energy. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and we go to all the parts or aspects or emotional patterns of ours that maybe have been ruling us from the shadows, ruling us from the unconscious. They are the occult powers, which we then call fate once we play them out with other people, the complexes that we tend to project out into the world. They get triggered, we magnetize them around ourselves, and then we feel like this was fated, this was meant to be. Where in truth, so often, what most people call fate is just our unconscious complexes playing themselves out, and that we're ruling us from our own shadow, from our own unconscious. Scorpio energy is about alchemizing that. It is about bringing light to the dark, about turning poison into medicine, about making the unconscious and the power it holds over us into a conscious expression that we can then utilize to hopefully also empower or help heal other people with. So anyhow, a lot of funky squiggles here on the chart. Venus making a square to Pluto and Mars making an opposition to Uranus. Sticking with Venus for another minute here. Venus about to square Pluto just a few days after the full moon. A full moon is usually a time of release. The cycle is full, we're ending a part, there's like a culmination, but also a deep exhale. The peak of the cycle has been reached. And usually the days after the full moon really feel like attention is dropping off. With this full moon, I kind of want to expect that there'll be a lot of attention and activation the few days following it specifically. And that we might feel like, oh, the peak of the cycle has been reached, the full moon is there, I can like deeply exhale. But it feels like a lot of the actual shifts will happen a few days afterwards. And that might, again, give us a feeling of having to be on guard. That kind of Scorpio protective energy, which really wants to protect itself from its own vulnerability. So Venus squaring Pluto implies, yes, more relationship change, depth transformation, letting go processes, power and powerlessness, power dynamics, but also a transformation, Pluto, of our values, Venus. A redemption, Pluto, of unconscious, neglected parts of our being, and to see how much Venus, how much value and worth is in there, how much golden beauty and also ability for pleasure and enjoyment is there. So it might play out a lot with relationship, it might play out Pluto's in Aquarius, it might play out a lot with groups or group dynamics or seeing things in the cyber world or whatever, or political peer kind of views of Pluto Aquarius energy, that as soon as Venus hits that aspect exactly 2-3 days after the full moon, just feels like brings out the potency of this full moon so much more, about how can we find safety and stability within, a return to simplicity, while at the same time holding space for the processes, holding space for the emotions. How can I fully be with myself in the activations of whatever is maybe surfacing right now in the emotional body, and yet hold space for that, knowing that I'm safe and stable, which of course, I'm pretty sure most of you watching this will be able to go there, but a big part of the world is not there. And so we also should not take that for granted or push that away. Because, and this is another thing, there's so much to say about where and how we abandon ourselves and recreate exactly the kind of trauma and pain and emotional wounding that we want to get away from by trying to get away from it. And in that way, just like the ancient Greek myths and so many ancient myths telling us that by trying to avert a certain kind of prophecy, one is unwittingly helping to bring it about. And the moving away and trying to get away from the depth of feeling and transformation that we can encounter with Scorpio, just so that we don't have to go there, often unwittingly actually puts us into much stronger foci of these plutonic forces of our subconscious erupting and taking over and forcing certain issues to a head. Yeah, the other thing is that Mars opposite Uranus. So Uranus will move back to Taurus a few days after, just as Mercury is about to go retrograde. Another story, another video. Mercury will re-enter Scorpio also with that, keep that trine energy active, while Venus will also already be in Scorpio, also moving forward to that Grand Water Trine at the late degrees of Scorpio. So there's so much Scorpio still around for the next weeks and weeks, even when the sun is already moving into Sagittarius. And yet here is the first glimmer and glimpse of something. Mars opposite Uranus is often a very explosive, very dissociative, and very fast kind of energy. It's an energy that usually brings us to a point of wanting to be free of something, wanting greater freedom or liberation in our self-expression. Especially Mars and a fire sign, even more so, can try to force its way out. With Sagittarius, there is usually also dispersing. I don't want to deal with this dark stuff anymore. Let me get the F out of here. And that gets activated so much more with Mars Uranus. Very mundane interpretations would be like, oh, watch out for accidents or bumping into things, because all that intense, volatile, physical energy in our field that really wants to act, if we don't give it a proper avenue, a proper channel, we will bring it out in one way or another. Very important energy with this is to keep your cool. It's a Taurus full moon. stay cool, stay centered, because this energy is really shaking us up. At the same time, it does bring in this Mars in Sagittarius and Uranus and Gemini kind of quality of Mars and Sagittarius. We want to find a new vision. We want to see something bigger. We want to know where the path is leading, at least get a feeling for that. Because again, this ending of the Saturn Neptune cycle. How do I do that? This ending of the Saturn Neptune cycle at the last degrees of Pisces on top of that is speaking so much about where and how we have that huge sense of disillusionment, of not knowing where to turn. Mars in Sagittarius is now like, okay, let me move forward. Mercury in Sagittarius also says like, oh, I see a big new vision, but like, ooh, wait a second, it'll go retrograde, it'll pull back into itself, it'll pull back into that deeper Scorpio kind of work and stuff, and emotional processes and relational processes, intimacy, vulnerability, trust, broken trust. Whereas Uranus and Gemini is so much about learning to see things from a new perspective, but also shifting our nervous system, where and how the overstimulation of our nervous system, for all the things and content we consume, all the information and perspectives we hear, is all bringing us away from that embodied Taurian presence in the here now, in our physical body, in knowing our own worth, in knowing our own values that are like guiding stars, that are like at the same time the fundament, the base level of what we build our own life upon. We have to be connected to that. We have to stay centered in the body. Like I said earlier, holding space for all of the emotional, Scorpio, water energy, or mental or unconscious somatic processes, the Gemini energy of the nervous system activations, holding space for that while tuning into the parts of our body that actually see and can feel like, oh, actually I am safe. I might feel a tightness on my chest. I might have a pounding headache. I might have like jittery anxiety in my nervous system, whatever it might be, but being able to hold that and stay present with it. And that's not the running away energy of Mars and Sagittarius, but that is really confronting the shadow, confronting the unconscious, confronting that which maybe you were never able to feel in the past, hold in the past. And the medicine is that full moon. The medicine is the simplicity, the stillness, the slowness. They're not rushing. Yeah, the first glimpses of Sag energy might give us some new glimmers of hope and visions and whatever, for all the fog that we can't penetrate right now of Neptune, Saturn at the end of Pisces. But we are still in this deep process. We still have to move through these energies for the next 3-4 months until this cycle really begins, and then we'll probably be missing and yearning a bit for the slower, heavier energy that we are in right now, because once these energies kick in next year, things will get fast, and they'll get fast quickly. Once Saturn and Neptune are fully out of Pisces into Aries, and once Uranus in early summer, I think, fully shifts into Gemini. It's so much fast energy ahead. So finding that stability within, the groundedness, the calmness, and that's the last point. I made it in the beginning, but I find this Jupiter in Cancer is one huge key component of everything and anything that's happening right now. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of both Pisces and Sagittarius. Jupiter is about how we find meaning, and we are in this huge loss of meaning, this huge loss of collective and personal storylines. We are in this deep water energy, all the water signs being active for such a long time with these heavy hitters, and then being activated one by one from all the fast moving planets through Scorpio, bringing up all kinds of scorpionic trauma and wounds, issues of abandonment, and where and how we don't feel safely attached to our sense of self, to our relationship, to our worthiness, to our inner sense of safety, to our values, to what we even desire, to even our own needs. And that is what Jupiter in Cancer is so much about. It's about showing us that we can't see the new vision, we can't find safety in the physical body, we can't run away from the deeper processes and work. We can try, But we'll never get really far until we really emotionally process. Jupiter is that energy of processing and distilling experiences of life into true wisdom and into true insight and into deeper meaning. And Jupiter in Cancer is so much about how and where can you find greater safety and stability, greater sense of expansion and lightness. Jupiter in Cancer, in the emotional body, and how you feel emotionally safe with yourself and then also with others. And there always, again, the moon rules Cancer. The moon is the first level of our physical body, but also of our emotional body. And we cannot be safe in our physical body if we don't feel all of our emotions and allow ourselves to feel them. And we cannot feel all of our emotions until we get fully into the physical body. That Mars-Uranus opposition, it's a very dissociating energy, like I said. But this dissociating energy can also be something that helps us free old patterns, old unconscious habits that have maybe been lodged into our nervous system very deeply. Uranus, the first degree of Gemini, that now with all of also these Scorpio activations are about to be dislodged. And then it's not about understanding, it's not about rationalizing, it's not about talking through all of it endlessly. It's all good, it's all great. Please don't do that. But in the end, it's only about holding enough space to feel it. Because the animal body of ours, the sensuous, sensual, physical animal of our body, only needs to feel the feelings, the somatic experiences inside of itself to release any kinds of old stories or traumas or unconscious belief systems that maybe keep us much more stuck, that keep us much more small. We don't need to understand these parts. It's great if that happens, but that doesn't release it. Talk therapy, simple psychotherapy, can only do so much if we don't take the body with us. And this is what I really feel this Taurus moon is so much about how and where can you find the stability, the safety, the trust in your physical body to endure the processes that we're in, and how much of this process relies on you doing the emotional distillation, the emotional maturation, the emotional space clearing within to bring greater emotional safety to your own being. From there, everything else blossoms. Everything else grows out of that part. And in the traditional zodiac, Aries is on the ascendant and Cancer is the lowest part of the chart. It's the fundament, it's a root, it's a base. Where and how can we find that emotional safety within? Because all the other parts of our psyche, all the other parts of our life, they all grow out from there. So that's a few insights into this Taurus full moon. If you liked what you heard, I'm super curious to hear your processes, your perspectives, your experiences. They are manifold, I can imagine. And if you ever want to dive in deeper, you can meet me for a one-on-one session where we really explore your own personal birth chart, your deeper life patterns, how the current transits are interacting with you, and the kinds of processes that you're in right now. And yeah, would be so honored to see you there. And until then, see you next time. Bye bye.